Good evening, everyone. Today is Sunday, the 1st of March 2026. Usually, on this show, we talk about policy, we talk about progress, and we talk about the future. Today, the air feels heavy. The headlines we are reading aren't just news anymore, they are screams of a society in agony. In the last few days, we have seen a 15-year-old girl in Narsingdi kidnapped and murdered in a mustard field simply for daring to ask for justice after being raped. We have seen a school teacher in Gaibandha, a woman who dedicated her life to lightening the path for children, found tied up and lifeless in her own home. And in Pabna, the sheer depravity reached a new low. A grandmother killed and her granddaughter found discarded in a field, stripped of her dignity and her life. We have to ask ourselves, is this just a breakdown of law and order? Or is this the final chilling symptom of a nation that has gone systematically bankrupt? Tonight, we aren't holding back. We are joined by a panel of experts to dissect the anatomy of the collapse. We are looking for the perpetrators, not just those holding the knives, but those who built the system that allowed them to sharpen them. Welcome to the conversation. This is Persecution Report, and tonight's episode is Bangladesh, a tale of systematic bankruptcy. Today, we have Anwar Salah Jihan as co-host. I'm Saifur Rahman, and we have Dr. Mamunur Rashid, also Raihan Jamil, who is joining us. Thank you all for joining us today. I would directly go to Mr. Jihan to take us through some real figures that recently happened or about this situation. To you, Jihan.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman, for connecting. So today's episode, the title tells us about the conversation, the systematic bankruptcy of a nation. Throughout the 18 months under the so-called Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, we have seen the economy of Bangladesh going from being the rising tiger to a complete catastrophe. According to the latest report, the Bangladesh economy, the GDP growth, the final value of all the products and services was about 3.49% in fiscal year 2025. And during the Awami League government, the average was 6-7%. In the economic sector, the worst hit was observed by the agriculture sector. The agriculture sector of Bangladesh reached 11-year low last year to 1.79%, which currently stands at about 2.42%. We have seen the Bangladesh government inking a deal with a country that only benefits the agricultural sector of that country. And this deal will further harm the agriculture sector of Bangladesh. Not only the agriculture sector hit 11-year low. If we take a look at the private investment scenario and the overall investment climate of Bangladesh, what we have seen from a so flashy presentation of the Biden chairman seems only bleak because we have not seen any investment coming in for the last 18 months. The private investment its 11-year low, and it stands 22.0% of the overall GDP. Public investment also reached very low, which is about 6.51% of total GDP. These numbers indicate two things: an overall weak investment climate amid the macroeconomic stress, and fewer jobs in the market than required for a rising number of young population. Recently, Oxford economic watchdog, published a report where it ranked Bangladesh 141 out of 164 countries around the world, which is they ranked the economic situation of Bangladesh very poorly compared to the other regional partners. The overall economic risk score was 7.1, whereas the average economic risk score of that region was 5.1. Oxford Economics evaluated the economic risk score based on 5 criteria. Here you can see those 5 criteria: market demand, market cost, exchange rate, sovereign credit, and trade credit. The market cost score was 8, the highest. That means doing business is more costly in Bangladesh, doing business is tougher. And if these trends continue, the economic future of Bangladesh is bleak. I'm sure Dr. Rashid and Dr. Jamil will have more to talk about it. Back to you, Mr. Rahman.
Thank you, Jihan, for taking us through the real figures. Firstly, I would like to go to Mr. Mamun Rashid with a question. Uh, Many argue that our current economic crisis isn't just a bad patch or a byproduct of global instability, but a result of deliberate systematic choices. Looking at the data, how much of this bankruptcy can we honestly blame on global market in fluctuations, and how much is the result of what some call internal policy sabotage, where the state's mechanism were intentionally skewed to benefit a few? Over to you, Mr. Mamun.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to Mr. Jihan as well for useful presentation of comparison where Bangladesh is currently standing and uh, where it is going. So the question was about whether this is the current condition in Bangladesh is due to global fluctuations or condition that is beyond our control, or this is simply because of sort of a systemic policy abuse or internal policy sabotage. Now let's have a look at what happened um, at the end of Sheikh Hasina's term. If you remember, 2019 is essentially, so far since the independence of the country, 2019 has been the best year considering investment, foreign investment, and also growth of local economy, GDP, and rest of the other calculation. The economy grew at the highest, one of the highest at that time, 2018-19. That was a time when the economy was growing more than 7.5%. And in 2020, at the onset of the COVID-19, the economy struggled a bit the first year. And then it quickly came back in 2021 with a GDP growth rate of, again, more than 7%. The problem is 2022, we have seen the struggle between Russia and the Ukraine. and it eventually led to a global chaos, a global crisis of commodities. The supply chain broke down, and the countries that eventually dependent on the supply of commodities from those countries, from Ukraine and Russia, eventually took a big hit. So our economy started again struggling, and the growth rate dropped near about 5%. And then came the big event of 2024. From the very beginning, as you see, the election happened, and post-election, there were a number of occasions where students came onto the street, started protesting. If I remember correctly, in 2024, from the beginning, almost after the election, Daily Star reported that during July-August protest, every day the country was losing about $1 billion as they were targeted arson, mob, and destruction of properties. So that was initially the beginning of the tangible crisis that we have seen. And obviously, one party was directly involved, but when the government fell on the 5th of August 2024, until 8th of August, we didn't have a government. And from 8th of August, the interim regime took over, led by Dr. Yunus. And that eventually led Bangladesh into a new spiral of crisis. So initially, it was not only a governance related crisis. The killing of the law and order, the forces related to law and order, the police, and then led to the investigation. They started an investigation about the student killing and others, creating a negative sentiment in the market. The bigger picture was at that time that whether the country would be able to pull out of the crisis. And the first impact, if I remember, sometime in September, the negative report that started appearing on the newspaper that typical households, started withdrawing their money from the bank. They needed that savings, which they had for long period of time. They needed that savings in order to survive because they did not have the regular income that they had for a long period of time. To place some comparison here, for example, a typical rickshaw puller used to earn about 1,200 taka a day in the capital city. And after the 5th of August, despite arson and others, they were trying their best to earn around 400, 500 taka a day. And after paying all other expenses, they basically didn't have anything in their pocket. So whatever savings these middle class family had in the bank, they had to withdraw that money in order to pay for their expenses. That was the beginning of household deficit. And household deficit means eventually leading to a deficit at the money market or at the financial market, because household is considered as one of the major suppliers of money to the economy. And then come the corporate shortage. How the corporate shortage started, as we have seen that there were targeted arson of number of factories, including the tire factories. As you know, that I think the 270 plus people were killed. No investigation happened. And then consistently there were mob and arson against a number of corporate formal and informal properties, and also properties owned by the leaders of the Awami League, and also general public. We have also seen intentional damage through coalition of forces, especially by the students. And that eventually led to many corporations declaring bankruptcy. Now, this bankruptcy at the top level, say around 250 to 300 companies, eventually led to a spiral of crisis through the supply chain, meaning that thousands of companies in the last 17 months or so eventually declared bankruptcy. That has led to, first of all, massive unemployment. And we now know that about 30 lakh people, according to formal figures by World Bank, that went unemployed. And around, say, about 70 to 80% of these people are women. Now, these crises at the corporate level, added to the household crisis, eventually led to a massive shortage of funds with the people. Now, to survive in this
If
scenario,
I may quickly add just a little bit to what you just said.
yeah,
The numbers you just mentioned about people losing jobs, they were in the first 6 months,
uh,
right?
these,
The report was for the first 6 months of the Yunus Jamaat regime that has happened. And imagine what has happened since then in the last 12 months.
yeah, we are only reporting the official figures. Our unofficial figure is even worse. For example, the unemployment, even by the official figure stated by one of the business association, I think BCCI recently said there are 1.2 million people already unemployed in the formal sector, and another 1.2 million would be unemployed in the next 6 months. So this is in the formal sector only. Formal and informal sector together, 6 months back, the figure was around 30 lakh, meaning 3 million people. Now, question is, they were working. Now they don't have any job. So eventually that led to shortage of money and other problems. That is only a part of the crisis. Now, this has led to the growth of the microcrime. Because I don't have money now, I need to now have sufficient money to either to stay in the city or to leave. So that has led to micro crimes. As you can see, Mr. Rahman explained at the beginning that there are a number of reports of rape and other crimes. Those are consistently happening in the society. My argument is that this entire cycle of events happened, and it was directly supported by the policymakers. So the entire events that you see in the last 17 months, starting with the arson, targeted arson, and the rapes, at one point in time, we had seen that the rapist came out of the jail, and the supporters actually went to the jail to get them out with flowers, bouquets, and it was a joyful moment for them. None of the rape cases actually were resolved. So the point is whether this is intentional, whether this is a intentional policy abuse or not. So from the statements given by the then regime, and also the reports, the small number of reports that came onto the media, this is very clear that it was an intentional policy abuse. It was never a part of the global crisis. Now, global crisis, my last part of the statement, let me take 1 minute to explain the global crisis. Global crisis happened until 2023-24. 2023-24, if you look at the foreign currency reserve also, we already had a stable foreign currency reserve from October 2023. So it was stabilizing. So if somebody come up and say that our foreign currency reserve was low because of the global crisis, yes, that happened in 2023, not in 2025 or 26. So what happened after the August 2024 was intentional, and it was driven by policy level actions. And later on, obviously, we'll talk about similar policy abuse at the banking sector and also financial sector. Back to you, Mr. Rahman.
Thank you, Dr. Mamun. Thank you for explaining very well what is happening and what was the actual reason behind the situation. I would like to add to your statement here. We know there was a case of a very little girl called Asia. If you remember, At that time, the law advisor, Mr. Asif Nazul, has stated in front of media that the culprit will be brought under trial within 7 days, but nothing has happened later on. So out now, go to Mr. Raihan Jamil. History shows that when a state becomes systematically bankrupt, it loses more than just money. It loses its primary function, the protection of its citizen. Looking at the horrific violence we have seen this week, the murders in Pabna, Gaibandha, and Narsingdi are these just crimes, or are they the inevitable symptoms of a state that has lost its monopoly on law and order? Mr. Raihan Jamil.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. I want to welcome everyone who is in the show and hopefully watching us now live or later on recording. Ramadan Kareem to everyone. We're already in the second 10 days of Ramadan, which is the Ashara of Maghfirat. So the 10 days of forgiveness. So I hope all of us ask for forgiveness. Now, to answer the question Mr. Rahman asked is like, when people say these terms, the three incidents that you have mentioned are isolated crimes, I think of the mustard fields, like you said earlier. In Narsingdi or in Gaibandha or in Pabna, all of those remind me of those of the mustard fields. But this time, they are spread with dead bodies and crimes. 3 districts, 8 days, fields meant for harvest turned into crime scenes. These are not rumors. These are documented cases, police reports, arrests, court remand orders, forensic examinations, national coverage, and of course, protests. The question is not whether these crimes happen. The question is, what kind of state allows them to cluster like this? When a mob feels confident enough to execute 2 men on suspicion alone, that is not sudden rage. That is a vacuum of authority. When a family seeking justice for rape is met with threats and pressure, and the girl herself is later abducted and murdered, that is not random brutality. That is institutional failure. We have to keep that in mind. When a grandmother is hacked while resisting an abduction, that is not merely criminal behavior. That is erosion of justice and complete lawlessness. A state loses its monopoly on law and order long before it actually admits it. Editorials and rights groups have warned for months about escalating mob violence and deteriorating law and order under the Yunus Jamaat regime. They warned that announcements alone would not restore security. They warned that impunity was growing, but the Yunus Jamaat regime never paid any heed to it. And the bodies kept appearing. If you remember, it was all over the news a couple of months ago that every month Bangladesh was seeing 43 dead bodies in the rivers. Right? It's amazingly, like, deeply saddening, shocking. So let us be honest. A government does not lose control because it lacks press conferences. It loses control when enforcement becomes selective. Exactly what we saw under Yunus Jamaat regime. When loyalty matters more than competence, when political image becomes more important than citizen safety, the government loses control. Under the Yunus Jamaat regime, the warnings were visible. Right? The warnings were all over. The data on mob violence was public. The editorials were blunt. If leadership appears unable or unwilling to contain vigilantism, then vigilantism becomes normalized. That's scary. That is not a bad week. That is a systematic bankruptcy of the Yunus Jamaat regime. We have to pay heed to this. This was done systematically. But here is what they cannot corrupt, Mr. Rahman. Here is what they cannot corrupt. In Gaibandha, a mother filed a murder case against the mob. In Narsingdi, students marched across campuses demanding justice. In Pabna, families pursued investigation instead of surrendering to fear. The soil, our soil, has not surrendered. Bangladesh was not built by administrations alone. It was built in fields, in villages, in movements where ordinary people, just like you and me, refused to accept the collapse, that collapse was our destiny. Yes.
Dr. Jamil, if I can add quickly here.
Please.
We have seen uncountable number of deaths of the law enforcement officials back in July 2024. And Bangladeshis have been demanding for investigation about those deaths. But recently, the Home Minister of Bangladesh has said that there will be no investigation on those deaths. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, all of this simply encourages more such behavior. Imagine a child who gets caught eating cookies from a cookie jar when he or she was not allowed to, let's say late at night, and the parents do not say or do anything about it. What is the child going to do the next day? Do the same thing again. If I'm going to attack you, rob you, loot from you, and then I say, well, nothing is happening against me, the law enforcement doesn't do anything. As a matter of fact, on the contrary, I'm being encouraged to do more of those things. I'm going to do more of those things. So I think that's exactly what happened. We have the Yunus Jamaat regime has given complete indemnity to all
this government, and this government seems to be continuing in the same track when they say that there will be no investigation, right?
You know, I'm just hoping that this government has just taken power not even a month ago, and I think that maybe once they have settled down a bit, got hold of all the Jamaati-led administration, maybe they will do the right thing and bring justice to all the people who died. Not even after 5th of August, but also before 5th of August. If they do a proper inquiry, we want justice for all dead people. And this is what Bangladesh needs to do if they want to become again credible in the world place. So as I was saying earlier, yes, these murders expose fragility, right? These murders expose fragility. Yes, they indict a leadership that has failed to enforce any law and order, right? The Yunus Jamaat regime has failed to enforce any law and order, directly connecting to what Jihan was saying just a moment ago. Yes.
As one of our audience has a question, because these killings did not happen under the Yunus government. This happened under this current government.
This current government meaning what?
Meaning
BNP government.
Right.
We didn't hear any strong message from the government or the ministry of the administration regarding these three incidents happened in last 8 days.
So true. And this is what the new government has to think about deeply. What kind of image they want to portray to the people of the country and then the people of the world. If they want to continue the legacy of the Yunus Jamaat administration, again, there is not much that ordinary people can do perhaps right away. But this is what the new government has to definitely take in mind. What is that they're afraid of by bringing justice to the victims of such heinous crimes? Right? So the audience member who has asked is a very valid question. And we just have to wait and see what happens. Mustard flowers still bloom, right? Farmers return to the same fields. Mothers still go to court, students still raise banners. People still believe justice is worth demanding. And this is where all of our combined voices needs to come through. We need to believe, we the people need to believe Justice is worth demanding. A regime may falter. A regime may falter. A cabinet may tremble. But a nation is not its interim government. The monopoly on violence may weaken. The monopoly on conscience does not. And to wrap up my answer to this part, Mr. Rahman, I would like to just say that the art is patient, justice is patient. And as long as there are people willing to plant, to protest, to file cases, to refuse silence, this country, our Bangladesh, is not bankrupt, not by a long shot. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Jamil. What we hear from you is the people of Bangladesh is looking for security. The people of Bangladesh are looking for stability and some sort of comfort that they deserve. I think that's their basic right. So I will come back to Mr. Mamunur Rashid again with another question. Institutions are usually the first to fail in a systematic collapse. In your view, which institutions decline acted as the ultimate domino, the central bank, the judiciary, or the election commission? Following that, our RMG sector has been the country's economic lifeline. With rising costs, chronic power outage, and the current political instability, are we at a point of no return where global buyers are permanently shifting their loyalty to competitors like Vietnam or India? Here, I would also like to add that or mention the recent agreement or non-disclosure agreement that has been signed between the interim regime and USA. Over to you, Mr. Mamun.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. If we could find out one point of start, say, everything actually started with a bad intention. And the single point that they had in mind, if I quote it, was a destructive rehabilitation. So that's why Yunus said that he wanted to reset everything. So that was the destructive rehabilitation of some forces. Now, we have seen that in the last 17 months, who were rehabilitated in institutions, mostly Jamaat and Yunus and BNP regime people. And that is the reason why they had to destroy existing properties, cause unemployment, cause poverty, and then to rehabilitate their own people. Now, that rehabilitation did not come with a good news. I mean, we saw that there are a number of occasions where the BNP supporters were found guilty of, charging illegal money from different quarters of the society. Now, there are different names for it. I don't want to go into details. So the first point where we started everything negatively with was a bad intention to reset the history, to reset the culture, resetting the economy, and everything else. Now, after the rehabilitation, if you remember, Sheikh Hasina a number of times mentioned that it was about some resources that she did not want to give to another country or number of countries. So due to this reset or destructive rehabilitation, now we see that our ports are gone, our sovereignty is gone. We don't have mere control on the southern part of the country. And there were even discussions about Saint Martin, one of the islands. We do not know what's the update of that island. So these are basically the rehabilitation, which was not possible in the last 15, 16 years during Sheikh Hasina's regime, suddenly became the point in the center stage of discussion. Now, when this rehabilitation happened, it happened everywhere. Every institutions were affected, starting with corporations, media. It happened with banks, central banks were taken, the banks were taken, even the schools were taken. The airports, our airports were, had seen a massive amount of new people, new faces suddenly came from somewhere and taking control of the sensitive resources of the country. Now, once this rehabilitation happened, some new people took control. Obviously, they didn't have necessary expertise to run those departments. That eventually led to uncertainty. And that uncertainty eventually led to chaos in the supply chain, in finance, in economics, in politics, everywhere. As you remember that Yunus himself mentioned to one of the newspaper interview that he was not qualified to run the government. Neither of his the affiliates, the advisors, none of them actually had the real expertise of running a government. That's why mess up happened everywhere. Now, once the supply chain affected, the control were lost. In order to retain that power, retain that control, in order to stop the Awami League people to come back, what they did, as Mr. Zamil mentioned and also Mr. Jihan mentioned, that what they did was they created and manufactured crises one after another in order to camouflage what is happening destructive in the economy and the loss of control, or the grabbing of the control from the Awami League. The new people came in, and in order to support these new people in politics, in business, they manufactured news and they manufactured crises one after another. We do not even know how many people were killed. The correct information is not available anywhere. We have some estimates only. Once the control is taken by the new people, they started affecting investments in their own way. Now we see that we have a non-disclosure agreement signed with a big country where we have given number of our resources, our industries, freely to that country. The first impact would be obviously on our supply chain. It would be more costly. Investment may dry up because if the cost increases, obviously the suppliers will move to other countries, as you have mentioned about ready-made garments. We will lose our competitiveness. Our cost will increase. Our port cost will increase. Our port has already, I heard that, raised the cost by around 30-40%. We need to also buy raw materials from that country. So that raw materials eventually will come up at a higher cost. That will increase your cost of final product. So we will lose our competitiveness, and this lack of competitiveness will eventually drive out suppliers to other countries. Say, for example, Vietnam, India, and other countries. They will be having this advantage of producing goods at a much lower cost than Bangladesh, meaning that the number one export product that we have 80% of the export coming from ready-made garments will be directly affected, which we have seen in the last month, that the European countries where 70-80% of our export is going, they have reduced our prices by around 4%. Now, this destruction is very clear. Now, the largest market for our ready-made garments is in the European Union, and we are now receiving 4% less price from those countries, meaning that there is a shock waiting for our ready-made garments industry. So supply chain affected, cost has gone up, and then comes the lower price for our commodities that is going to affect our revenues. There is a major impact as well, another major impact that we are not looking into. If you receive less revenue from ready-made garments industry, for example, alongside other industries, that will eventually spiral down to your employment. Say, for example, if you were paying around 12,000 to 15,000 taka to a ready-made garments worker per month, now as you have seen the cost going up, in order to maintain your competitiveness, the most innocent people that you can cut from is the ready-made garments people. The worker, those who will be working there, they will have, say, around 10% salary reduction. Okay, that will eventually affect your consumption or money that is coming into the economy. Number one. Number second is there will be another impact. I'm not sure whether you have seen it. Yunus government, at the very last moment, they signed an agreement or some sort. I'm not sure that that will be eventually passed by the current government. the profit share of the industrial workers. There were 5% profit share. I think you heard this news. And Yunus government canceled it in order to give more benefits to the foreign industrial compound or the investors. Now, if they lose this 5% profit share, this was in place when we did not want to give very high salary to our ready-made garments worker. That's why the proposal was that the industrial sector, the labor should be given another 5% as profit share so that they can cover some cost. Now, if this 5% profit share is taken away, now you can easily imagine what would be the net, take-home salary of a ready-made garments worker in the future. Now, ready-made garments is our major industry, right? If they see 10% or 15% salary reduction, all other industries will eventually see a 10 to 15% salary reduction. This is kind of a normal phenomenon in the industry. So everyone will be affected. But the regular prices of commodities will not go down. And we see now there's Ramadan time going, and the prices of general commodities in the market is generally high, quite opposite to other countries. And this is not going to go down in the future because there are lesser supply chain. The supply chain is affected. We are only importing from one country, India mostly. And that is affecting our prices as well. Our local production has gone down significantly. Our export has gone down for the last, 8 months. The import that we have made mostly is rice from India and some supply chain related import for ready-made garments industry. That is not going to help us in production of our agricultural commodities. The last thing is, as you know, there is a indirect requirement of the, direct requirement of the agreement that we have signed with USA is that we cannot give any special financial benefits to our agricultural producers, say farmers and others, meaning that this 5% reduction of the bonuses or any kind of financial benefits that you're planning in the future to give to your farmers in order to reduce the cost of production may not happen. So either you have to rely on more imports from other countries, or you have to face, problems with bigger countries. So the country is now in a dilemma whether you want to sit with all the political parties together to resolve this destructive rehabilitation, because a major part of the business organization is still very slow because the Awami League government and the businesses owned by their supporters are currently not that much active. So you have to sit with them in order to accelerate the economic growth, the production or related activities. Otherwise, you will have more trouble with your supply chain, your cost, because everything is going to go up. And investment will not come until you reduce your uncertainty and reduce your cost. As Mr. Jihan presented, that we are very high in terms of our cost right now compared to other countries. Nothing happened to Vietnam in the time being. Nothing happened to other countries. Only Bangladesh were affected. So since this cost is very high, businessmen, while investing their precious money to Bangladesh, they will be thinking not only about political stability, but also about whether there is a bigger chance of earning more money back to their currency. Back to you, Mr. Rahman.
Thank you, Mr. Mamun, for explaining it very well. Before going to the next question, I would like to report an incident that just I have noticed today. An incident took place at around 2 p.m. today in the jungle area of Botanical Garden and Eco Park, Sitakundo, Chattogram. If you have already heard that or read that news, I'm not sure. I would like to convey this news to our audience and our panelists here. Local people rescued a very young girl after spotting her walking with her throat slit in Sitakundo, Chittagong. Local youths Rabiul Hassan and Ariful Islam Roni stated that laborer Laborers were working on the road about 5 kilometers deep into the eco park area. During that time, an excavator operator spotted a child walking out of the jungle toward the road covered in blood. He immediately called the other workers and rescued the girl. They then wrapped her slit throat and with clothes, placed her on a truck, and rushed her to the Sitakunta hospital. However, they did not see who was responsible for the attack. This is just the incident happened today. Okay. Next, I would like to go to Mr. Jamil again. There is a chilling connection between this economic desperation and social brutality. Is there a direct correlation between this systemic bankruptcy and the breakdown of our social moral fabric? Furthermore, when we look at the kitchen market, the skyrocketing inflation, is this truly a global phenomenon, or is it the result of domestic syndicates operating with the total impunity while the poor pay the ultimate price? Mr. Jamil.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. Your question has multiple aspects to it. I'll see if I can answer them as much as possible. There is a chilling connection between economic desperation and social brutality. History shows it, sociology confirms it, and we are living it. When inflation climbs beyond wages, when kitchen market becomes battlegrounds of survival, when parents calculate whether to buy rice or to buy medicine, pressure builds, not in headlines in our homes. But we must be precise. Poverty alone does not create brutality. Bangladesh has known poverty before. It did not always produce mob lynchings, rape murders, or public executions on suspicion. So, what changes is not only the economy, what changes is institutional restraint. When prices rise and enforcement weakens at the same time, that is when desperation mutates into violence. Let us talk about the kitchen market. Oil, rice, lentils, eggs, chal dal, deem, noon. For many families, they are no longer routine purchases. They are negotiations with scarcity. We are told that this is global. We are told supply chains are disrupted. We are told inflation is important, just like Dr. Rashid was talking about earlier so eloquently. But if inflation is global, why is impunity local? Think about it for a moment. Why do syndicates operate openly in domestic markets? And why do the government does regulatory action appear slow, selective, or symbolic? A global crisis explains pressure. It does not explain paralysis. If citizens think a handful of protected actors manipulate markets, while enforcement agencies look away, trust collapses. And when trust collapses, social morality begins to fray. Under the Jamaat Yunus regime, the narrative has been management without mastery. Dr. Rashid was saying earlier how they invented, how they created a new crisis every other day, so that people look away from what is actually happening behind the scenes to the economy. Statements without structural correction is what the Jamaat Yunus regime was known for. Meetings without measurable deterrence. And quiet anger. And this creates quiet anger in people. They do not see any resolution. And quiet anger is dangerous. There is a direct correlation between systematic weakness and moral breakdown. Not because poverty makes people evil. Like I said, we have seen poverty before. But because institutional injustice makes people cynical. And when law enforcement appears inconsistent, when regulatory bodies lack teeth, When corruption feels insulated, people internalize a brutal lesson, Mr. Rahman. That lesson is survival is individual. And once survival becomes individual, solidarity is gone. That is systematic bankruptcy. Not empty coffers, how much money the government has, empty credibility. But here is where I refuse to surrender. In local markets across Bangladesh, I still see small vendors extending credits to families that they know they cannot pay today. I see neighbors pulling money in together to buy food and food in bulk. I see parents skipping meals so that the children can eat. Our moral fabric has not disappeared. It is under profound strain. So, our economic reform must be aggressive. Market oversight must be fearless. And anti-syndicate action must be visible and impartial, not performative. Bangladesh has survived scarcity before. What we cannot survive is institutional indifference. What you are asking about the kitchen market is not just about prices, it is about trust. As long as ordinary people continue to practice quiet generosity in the midst of inflation, this nation, our nation, is not bankrupt in spirit. Our soil still holds dignity. It is leadership that must decide whether it will hold it too. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I would request Mr. Jahan to come up with some more information that he has on his table. Please, Mr. Jahan.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. So let me start with what Mr. Jamil has said. He mentioned some terms: morality, trust, and the collapse of institutions. So this part of my presentation is about central bank and how central bank was led by a completely immoral person. The immorality of this gentleman was disclosed fairly recently by the media of Bangladesh, but we have been talking about it since 18 months. Last year, April, he faced criticism over his authoritarian style, lack of transparency. There were some allegations about a flat in Dubai that he supposedly has, which he denied. He denied having that flat under his name. But recent documents from United Arab Emirates Land Department reveals that not only his relative's name, but also his name is in the ownership document. So he right out blatantly lied about it. And then he went ahead saying that he only bought one dress for his relative in 3 years. He was trying to sound moral while all these were nothing but lies. During his time in Bangladesh Central Bank, the most controversial action that he overtook was the forced merger of 5 banks. You know, the Exim Bank and Social Islamic Bank, they did not want to merge. Without any consultation with the banking sectors, this forced merger happened. Paid up capital completely were wiped out, shareholders were left with nothing. This forced merger, I'm sure that Mr. Roshid, he previously also talked about it, and he probably will have some more things to say about it. Recently, his exit from Bangladesh Bank was not so dignified. He faced the same mob that he once established, unfortunately. And the Bangladesh Bank Welfare Association has raised some allegations about him. Here are the allegations. The most chilling allegation was the abuse of Bangladesh Financial Intelligence Unit's information on frozen accounts for personal gain. He and his syndicate allegedly used those information to do trade of favors. His relatives were involved in it. He violated the Bangladesh Bank account policies while he urgently pushed for digital banking license for Bikash and part of BRAC. He was a chairman of BRAC Bank. So this is a complete clear conflict of interest. And he violated, there is certain law about 10% cap that one group cannot hold over 10% ownership. He violated that policy. He violated the policy of Bangladesh Bank about car purchase. There is a limit of, I forgot the limit, but 2 crore or something like that. His car was worth 2 crore, which violates the limit set by Bangladesh Bank. Under the table, there had been so much secret cash deals. His family members had multiple cars that drew uncountable money for those maintenance, even though when those are already provided. He used the corporate social relief fund for his personal benefits, for his friend, and for his own primary schools. This is clear erosion of morality. When an institution is led by such immoral person, that itself speaks volume. And that's why the trust of investors, the trust of citizens in government is slowly deteriorating. And there must be talks about it, and there must be proper investigation about this gentleman who blatantly lied that he did not have that flat in Dubai, when in reality he does. The Bangladeshi people has a right to know where those money went, how those went, and he must be brought to justice. Thank you. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jihan. As we are running out of time, but still, we have some few more questions. Or very, I would like to go to Mr. Mamnur Rashid again about what Jihan has shown us right now, and the question to you is: the banking sector is often described as the bleeding heart of our economy. We talk about non-performing loans as a financial risk, but they seem to have become something much more sinister. How did these non-performing loans transitions from being bad business into a sophisticated tool for systematic wealth extraction from the public treasury? Mr. Mohammed.
Let me quickly save our time and let me quickly go through it. Our League government in the end, let's say around September 2024, the percentage of non-performing loan was around 16%. Now it is around 40%. So even if you run an econometric model, you can say that, well, some of these non-performing loan came from the past. But that 16% in Awami League's government time, September 2024, actually was a result of 54 years of Bangladesh entire history of the banking sector. Now, 16% to 40%, the increase is only by the Yunus Jamaat regime. So why did that happen? That happened obviously because of the intentional destruction of the properties and the businesses. That's how some of the good loans became bad loans. Now, the issue is how that eventually, came to this current situation. I think bad policies, immoral policies, as Mr. Jihan explained, that people were busy making more money for themselves rather than taking care of the banking sector. So the merger activities were part of the rehabilitating Jamaat to bring back to financial sector. So the actual health, the quality of the banking sector was not taken care of. Rather, they emphasized on rehabilitating certain group. Okay, that's why our non-performing loans and other banking sector indicators eventually worsen in the last, let's say, 18 months, 17 or 18 months. For the sake of time saving, I'll stop it here and back to you, Mr. Rahman. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mamoon. I have a last question for Mr. Jamil here. If we accept that the current system is bankrupt, not just financially, but structurally, what is the alternative, do you see? What radical, perhaps even uncomfortable shifts are required in our fiscal and political policy right now to prevent a total state collapse?
I'll try to be brief. I know we're running out of time. Well, we have to have zero tolerance for mob culture. That's it. Fast track prosecution, public reportings on case progress, demonstrating that vigilantism is not heroic, it is criminal. Our nation has survived war, famine, dictatorship because ordinary people refuse to surrender their belief in justice. The art of this country is patient. It absorbs blood, it absorbs tears, and still it produces harvest. The question is not whether Bangladesh has an alternative. The question is whether our leadership has the will to plant it. Back to you.
Thank you very much. We have spent this hour dissecting the systematic bankruptcy of our institutions. But let us be honest, a system doesn't go bankrupt on its own. It is emptied out, it is emptied by silence of the powerful, the indifference of the protected, and the slow erosion of a justice system that has become a maze rather than a shield. When a teacher is no longer safe in her home and a child is discarded like refuse in a field, the social contract hasn't just been based, it has been incinerated. We cannot call ourselves a developing nation if we are developing into a place where our daughters' lives are the currency of chaos. Tonight, we didn't just report on the news, we reported on a crisis of conscience. The perpetrators and are indeed those holding the knives, but the accomplices are very policy. Every bribe and every delayed investigation that told this monster they could get away with it. The question we leave you with is no longer what went wrong, but rather when will we demand it to be made right? Because if we continue to stay silent, the next headline won't just become a scream in the dark. It will be our collective epitaph. I am Safi Rahman. This has been the Persecution Report. Good night, and may we find the courage to face the truth tomorrow. Thank you.